After I refused to pay my sister's rent again, Mom sent movers to dump her furniture at my house and said, "Leave it there. He'll break when he sees his porch full." But I didn't live there anymore. The new owner walked outside, checked the lease papers, had everything removed on the spot, and that wasn't even the worst part. The basil was coming in. 3 weeks since I planted it in the small clay pot on my apartment balcony, and the leaves were finally tall enough to pinch. I had my grandmother Bet's garden trowel in my right hand and a watering can in my left, and the October morning was cool enough that the metal handle of the trowel had a chill on it. The trowel is older than I am. Wooden handle worn smooth from 30 years of Bet's grip. She planted every flower in the old house's garden with this trowel. She planted roses and marigolds and a row of basil along the fence that grew so thick you could smell it from the sidewalk. She died 8 years ago. The trowel was in a box labeled "Donate" the day I moved out. My best friend Ruth Ann pulled it out and held it up and said, "You are not donating your grandmother's trowel, Sable. Put it in the keep box." Now, so I kept it. It sits on my windowsill. It is the only thing from the old house that I did not sell, donate, or leave behind. My phone rang at 8:47. The number was not in my contacts. Charleston area code. I answered because I manage rental properties for a living, and unknown Charleston numbers are usually tenants. "Miss Thornton, my name is Beatrice Hargrove. I believe I purchased your house on Magnolia Street 6 weeks ago." "You did. There is a moving truck in my driveway. 2 men have placed a couch, a dresser, a bed frame, 4 boxes, and a floor lamp on my front porch. They have a document they are calling a lease agreement. The lease names a tenant called Kenneth Thornton and lists a property owner called Noreen Thornton. I am the property owner. My name is on the deed. This lease is not mine, and I did not sign it. I set the watering can down on the balcony rail. The basil dripped once onto the concrete. Miss Hargrove, I am sorry. That is my mother and my sister. I assumed it was family. The men with the truck are standing on my lawn. I have called the police. I have also called my former firm because I was a property attorney for 31 years, and I know what a forged lease looks like. I would have retired without ever seeing one delivered to my own porch, but here we are." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my mother had sent a moving truck to a retired property attorney's front porch with a forged lease and a plan to install my sister in a house that did not belong to anyone in my family anymore, and the precision of the failure was so complete that it circled all the way back around to something that almost sounded like a joke. "Ms. Hargrove, I will be there in 20 minutes. Take your time, Ms. Thornton. I have coffee. The police will be here before you." I put the trowel down next to the pot. I picked up my keys. I did not pick up the watering can. The basil would be fine. Before I tell you about the porch, I need to tell you about the 52 months. My name is Sable. I am 33 years old. I manage residential rental portfolios for 3 landlords across Charleston. 47 units total. I handle lease agreements, tenant screening, maintenance coordination, rent collection, and eviction filings. I know South Carolina landlord-tenant law the way a surgeon knows anatomy. I know what a valid lease looks like. I know what a forged one looks like. I know how occupancy is established and how it is terminated, and what happens when someone tries to skip the steps in between. For 52 months, I paid my sister Kenna's rent, $1,400 a month. I paid it because my mother Noreen told me Kenna was struggling, because Kenna had a son named Jax who was 2 years old when the payment started, because I had a house and a steady income and Kenna had neither. I did not question where the rent went. I set up an auto pay to my mother's account, and I trusted that the money was landing where it was supposed to land. I also paid Kenna's car insurance for 36 months, $280 a month. I covered 5 emergency bailouts over 4 years, a broken transmission, a dental bill, a security deposit when Kenna moved to a new unit, a credit card minimum that was about to default, and a $3,200 check for Jax's preschool deposit that I wrote on a Tuesday in June. On Thursday of that same week, Kenna posted 4 photographs from a beach resort in Myrtle Beach. Jax was in the pool. Kenna was on a lounge chair with a drink in her hand. The resort was called Driftwood Palms. I looked it up. The cheapest room was $240 a night. Kenna had been there since Wednesday. The preschool deposit was not a preschool deposit. The preschool deposit was a beach vacation. I called my realtor that evening. I said, list the house. She said, when? I said, now. The house on Magnolia Street sold in 19 days. $278,000. I cleared the mortgage, paid closing costs, and netted $61,000. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment on Broad Street with a balcony that fits one chair and one clay pot and one grandmother's trowel. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell my sister. I did not tell my father Lou. I did not post it. I did not announce it. I disappeared from a house and let the absence do the talking. 6 weeks later, my mother sent a moving truck to the porch. If this is the kind of story you came for, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Because the furniture on the porch was not the worst part. The worst part was what fell out of the dresser. I pulled up to Magnolia Street at 9:11. Two things were different. The garden had roses in it. Beatrice had planted roses in the same bed where Betty had grown basil for 20 years. The roses were small and young and staked with green wire. They would be beautiful by spring. The second thing was the police cruiser in the driveway next to a moving truck with its ramp still down and its cargo bay empty because everything that had been inside it was now on the porch. The porch looked like a yard sale that had been dropped from a helicopter. Kenna's couch was wedged against the front railing at an angle that blocked the steps. A bed frame was leaning against the siding. 4 cardboard boxes were stacked next to the door, one of them crushed on one corner where the movers had set the floor lamp on top of it. The floor lamp was lying on its side with the shade dented. And the dresser. My mother's old walnut dresser that had been in her hallway for as long as I could remember was lying face down on the porch boards because the movers had not been careful. 2 of the 4 drawers had come open. Clothes were spilling out of one. Papers were spilling out of the other. Beatrice Hargrove was standing on the front walk in a cardigan and reading glasses with a cup of coffee in one hand and 2 pieces of paper in the other. She had the bearing of a woman who has attended 800 depositions and is not going to be rattled by a couch on her porch. The 2 movers were sitting on the tailgate of the truck. They had the faces of men who had been hired to deliver furniture and had arrived to find a police cruiser and a retired attorney waiting for them with a cup of coffee and a disposition that suggested they should sit down and not touch anything else. The officer was young. He had a notepad. He was writing something. He looked up at me and looked back at his notepad. Beatrice looked at me when I walked up. She extended her hand. Her handshake was firm and brief. Miss Thornton, I have 2 documents to show you. The first is the lease these gentlemen presented when I asked them what they were doing on my porch. The lease names your sister Kenna Thornton as tenant and your mother Noreen Thornton as property owner. Your mother is not the property owner. I am. This lease is fabricated. I have already asked the officer to file an illegal dumping citation and a document fraud report. The citation is $2,400. The fraud report will go to the county DA. She held up the second piece of paper. The second document fell out of your mother's dresser when the drawer opened on the porch. I picked it up because I have been reading legal documents for 31 years, and I can identify a power of attorney at arm's length. This one has your name on it. Your social security number is on it. The signature at the bottom is supposed to be yours. Is it? I looked at the document. The signature looked like mine the way a photocopy looks like the original. Close from a distance. Wrong up close. The notary stamp was from a service I had never used. No, that is not my signature. I did not think so. The notary stamp is from a service called QuickSign Express. That service was shut down 4 years ago for processing documents without verifying identity. I know this because my firm handled the class action. I stood on the front walk of a house I used to own and looked at a power of attorney I did not sign that had been living inside a dresser that my mother had sent to a porch that no longer belonged to me. And the morning sun was hitting Beatrice's new roses, and the roses did not care about any of it. A neighbor 2 doors down had come out onto her porch and was watching. She had a mug in her hand. She did not drink from it. On Monday, I sat at my kitchen table in the apartment on Broad Street with my laptop and pulled every thread I could reach. The power of attorney had been used. 7 years ago, the same month I closed on the Magnolia Street house, someone used the forged POA to open a home equity line of credit for $43,000 against the property. My property. The HELOC was taken out at a bank I had never visited. The signature was the same forgery from the POA. $43,000 borrowed against a house I had just bought with $48,000 of my own savings as a down payment. My mother had leveraged my house purchase to borrow against it before the ink on my mortgage was dry. I pulled my credit report. 3 credit cards I did not open. 1 Visa, 1 Discover, 1 Capital One. Combined balance, $27,000. The Capital One was in collections. All 3 listed my old Magnolia Street address. All 3 had been opened with my Social Security number over the past 5 years. All 3 had their statements mailed to the Magnolia Street house, where my mother had access because she had a key I had given her 3 years ago to check on things while I traveled for work. The same key, the same front door, the same house that had been a locked box with my name on it, as she had put it, except that the lock had been hers for 7 years and I was the only person who did not know it. Total identity fraud, the $43,000 HELOC, plus $27,000 in credit cards. $70,000. On my name. On my credit. Through my house. By my mother. Then I pulled the county property records for Kenna's apartment. I know how to search LLC filings because I do it every week for my landlords. I searched Thornton in the Charleston County Business Registry. One result. Thornton Lane Properties, LLC. Registered agent, Noreen Thornton. I pulled the property records for Kenna's apartment building. Owner of record, Thornton Lane Properties, LLC. Deed status, free and clear. No mortgage. No lien. My mother owned Kenna's apartment. Free and clear. No debt on it. And for 52 months, I had been paying $1,400 a month in rent to my mother's personal account for an apartment my mother owned outright. $72,800. Every dollar of it profit. My mother had been running a private landlord operation off her own daughter's guilt, and the tenant was her other daughter. And the rent was coming from the daughter she called selfish. I closed the laptop. I looked at the trowel on the windowsill. Bet had used that trowel to plant basil along a fence in a garden that my mother had sent a moving truck to. Bet had fed every neighbor on her block. Bet had done her own taxes. Bet had never taken a dollar from anyone. And her daughter Noreen had taken $70,000 from the grandchild Bet had taught to keep books, using a forged signature and a dead woman's house as the staging ground. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. If you have made it this far, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Because the movers are gone. But the math is just getting started. Monday evening, 6:41 p.m. The apartment buzzer rang. I was on the couch with Ruthann. Ruthann had come over with a bottle of wine and a folder of printouts she had pulled from the county assessor's database, because Ruthann is a property manager too. And when I told her about the LLC, she had said, "Give me 20 minutes and an internet connection." I looked at the buzzer screen. Noreen, she was standing in the lobby with her purse in front of her chest and her phone in her hand, and her jaw set in the way it sets when she has rehearsed a speech on the drive over and is ready to deliver it, whether anyone has agreed to listen or not. I went downstairs. I opened the lobby door. I did not invite her up. I stood in the doorway the way I stand in doorways now, which is all the way in them, without leaving room. Noreen was wearing the blouse she wears to church and the flat she wears when she has been driving, and her lipstick was on, which meant she had prepared for this visit the way she prepares for every performance, which is completely, "You sold the house. I sold the house. Without telling your family. Without telling my family. That house was Bet's house. That house was my house. My name on the deed. My mortgage. My payments. My house. Bet built that garden. Bet is dead, Mom, and you sent a moving truck to her garden. Noreen's voice changed. It went from accusation to the place underneath accusation, the place where the real voice lives. The one she saves for kitchens and car rides and phone calls late at night when nobody else is listening. Except this time, the neighbor on the second floor landing was listening with a laundry basket on her hip, and Ruth Ann was upstairs on the couch next to a county assessor printout. You are 33 years old, and you lived in that house like it was a museum of yourself. 3 bedrooms and 1 person. Not even a cat. Not even a man who stays past breakfast. Your sister has a child. Your sister needs the space. What did you need it for? To sit in it. To polish floors nobody walks on. Your grandmother, Bet, would be ashamed of you. Bet fed every neighbor on her street. You would not feed your own sister. You are the most selfish woman I have ever raised, and I raised you in a house that belonged to a woman who gave everything to everyone, and you turned it into a locked box with your name on it. The neighbor on the landing had set her laundry basket down. She was standing very still. The building was quiet the way buildings are quiet when one voice is doing all the work and every other voice has decided to listen. I almost let her finish and close the door and walk upstairs and pour a glass of wine and call it a night. I almost chose quiet over consequence. But the folder was behind the door, and the folder had 6 pages in it, and 6 pages is a lot of quiet that has been waiting a very long time to stop being quiet. I reached behind the door and picked up the manila folder. The house closed 6 weeks ago, Mom. Beatrice found your dresser. The power of attorney inside it has my signature, and I did not sign it. 25 words. Noreen's mouth closed. Her jaw, which had been leading her face for 33 years, stopped. Her eyes went to the folder and stayed there the way eyes stay on things they do not want to be real. Her hands went to her purse straps and tightened until her knuckles went white. Her shoulders came in a 1/4 inch, then another 1/4 inch, and her whole body seemed to lose an inch of height like a building settling into bad foundation. She looked smaller standing in my lobby than she had ever looked standing in my kitchen, because my kitchen had been hers for 7 years without me knowing it, and this lobby was not hers and never would be. I held the folder out. Page 1 is the forged power of attorney with my social security number. Page 2 is the HELOC for $43,000 taken against my house using that forgery. Page 3 is the credit report showing 3 cards I did not open with $27,000 in balances. Page 4 is the LLC filing for Thornton Lane Properties showing you own Kenna's apartment free and clear. Page 5 is the Zelle history showing 52 months of rent payments from my account to yours for a property you own without a mortgage. $72,800. Noreen took the folder. She held it for 4 seconds. Then her fingers opened. The folder hit the lobby floor. Papers fanned across the tile. She did not pick them up. She looked at me. She looked at me the way a person looks at a locked door when they have lost the key and the locksmith is not coming. She turned. She walked out. The lobby door closed behind her. The pneumatic hinge made its slow exhale sound. I stood in the doorway for another 10 seconds. Then I bent down and picked up the papers one by one and put them back in the folder and walked upstairs and sat on the couch next to Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann handed me a glass of wine. She did not say anything for about 2 minutes. Then she said, "The LLC filing alone is enough for a civil suit. I know. The HELOC is criminal. I know that too. The things that came after Monday came fast." Kenna texted me on Tuesday morning. Her text was long. Parts of it were in all caps. The sentence that stayed in my chest was, "You had 3 bedrooms and a garden, and you couldn't let your nephew sleep in one of them." Jax asked me this morning where Auntie Sable's house went. I told him his aunt sold it because she loves money more than family. I read it. I put the phone down. I picked up the trowel from the windowsill. I turned it over in my hand. The wood was smooth. Bet's hand had made it smooth over 30 years. I put the trowel back. I did not reply to the text. On Wednesday, my father Lou called. Lou does not call unless something is costing him money. Something was costing him money. His voice had the tight edge it gets when a bill has arrived that he was not expecting, and the bill has his name on it. Sable, the bank is calling me about my boat. The storage address on the loan is Magnolia Street. Your garage. The bank says the address is no longer valid because the property transferred ownership. They are calling the loan. $38,000. You sold the house without telling me my boat was on that address. Your boat was in my garage, Dad. I did not put it on a loan application. You did that yourself. You had an obligation to tell this family before you sold. I had an obligation to myself. I met it. You are killing this family over a house you did not even need. 3 bedrooms. Empty rooms. Your mother is right about you. You would rather watch your family drown than open a single door. The door was open for 52 months, Dad. I spent $94,000 keeping it open. Nobody said thank you. Nobody said my name. And Mom was forging my signature the entire time. Lou was quiet for 6 seconds. The phone line was not dead. I could hear him breathing. His breath had the rhythm of a man who has run out of arguments and is standing in the empty space where the next argument was supposed to be. Then he hung up. Not gently. The phone made that small, abrupt sound phones make when someone pulls them from their ear and presses end with their thumb while the phone is still moving. His boat was repossessed from a storage unit he had moved it to 2 weeks later. The loan went into default. Lou's credit dropped 118 points in a single month. The boat had been a 26-foot bayliner he had bought 3 years ago and used twice. It had been sitting in my garage, taking up the space where my car should have been. I had been parking in my own driveway for 3 years because my father's boat was in my garage, and asking him to move it would have been, in my mother's words, making a scene over a parking spot. Scenes, that is what my mother calls it when I have a need that is not hers. On Thursday, Kenna sent a voice memo to my phone. Jax's voice. Small, Auntie Sable, Mommy says we have no house. Can I come to your house? His voice cracked on the word house. I almost called back. I held the phone for 11 seconds. Then I heard the background. Kenna's voice, low, coaching, and behind Kenna's voice, Noreen's laugh. Not a big laugh, a small one. The kind of laugh a person makes when the performance is going well and they think the microphone is off. I deleted the memo. I set the phone face down on the counter. I picked up the watering can. I watered the basil. I used Bet's trowel to press the soil down around the stem. The soil was damp. The basil was growing. I did not call back. The next 3 weeks moved the way consequences move, which is one at a time, in order, without asking permission. Beatrice's police report resulted in a $2,400 illegal dumping fine against Noreen. The citation was mailed to Noreen's address on Pine Ridge Road. Noreen opened it at the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. She read it twice. She put it on the counter next to the coffee maker. She did not pay it. The document fraud referral went to the Charleston County DA the same week. The DA opened a preliminary file. The forged lease, naming Noreen as property owner of a house she did not own, was attached as Exhibit 1. The forged power of attorney was attached as Exhibit 2. The officer's body camera footage from the porch, showing the dresser on its side, the papers scattered, and Beatrice standing with the POA in her hand, was attached as Exhibit 3. My attorney filed an identity fraud report with the FTC and all 3 credit bureaus. The 3 credit cards were frozen. The HELOC was flagged. A fraud investigation was opened against Noreen with my full documentation, the forged POA, the HELOC application, the credit card accounts, the 5 years of bank statements showing charges I had never authorized at stores I had never visited, in cities I had never been to. One of the credit cards had a $2,200 charge at a furniture store in Somerville from last November. The furniture was the couch, Kenna's couch, the one that was now sitting in a police impound lot because Beatrice had had everything removed from the porch as abandoned property. My mother had used my stolen credit to buy the couch that she then tried to install on my former porch. The math was almost poetic in its circularity. My attorney also filed a civil demand against Thornton Lane Properties LLC for $72,800. The demand letter stated that Noreen Thornton had collected rent from me for an apartment she owned free and clear while misrepresenting it as a third-party rental obligation. The demand was served at Noreen's home address on a Tuesday morning at 9. My father, Lou, answered the door. The process server told me later that Lou read the name on the envelope, looked at the server, and said, "Who is suing us now?" The server said the demand was addressed to Noreen Thornton and Thornton Lane Properties LLC. Lou took the envelope inside. He did not come back out. He did not open it for 2 days. When he opened it, he sat at the kitchen table for 45 minutes reading 6 pages of demand language that described, in clean legal prose, how his wife had been charging their older daughter rent on a property she owned outright while simultaneously stealing that daughter's identity to borrow $70,000 against the house the rent money was supposed to justify. The family group chat had 29 people in it. On a Wednesday evening, 3 days after the demand was served, I posted one line: "Mom has been using my social security number for 7 years. The forged power of attorney is now in the hands of the Charleston County DA. The police report is public record." I attached the case number. I did not attach the documents. Public record means anyone with the case number can pull the file at the courthouse. By Thursday night, 14 people had left the chat. Noreen's sister left first. She did not post a message. She just left. Then 2 cousins. Then Lou's brother, who had lent Noreen $3,000 last Christmas for medical bills. Then Kenna, who left the chat at 11:47 p.m. after posting one message that said this family is broken because one person decided she mattered more than everyone else. Nobody replied to Kenna's message. The message sat at the bottom of the chat like a stone at the bottom of a pool. 15 people remained. None of them spoke. Noreen's best friend of 22 years. A woman named Harriet, who worked at the same church thrift shop where Noreen had volunteered every second Saturday for 15 years, called Noreen on Friday afternoon. The call lasted 4 minutes. Harriet said she had heard about the fraud case from her husband, who worked as a clerk at the courthouse. Harriet asked if it was true. Noreen said it was a misunderstanding. Noreen said Sable had always been difficult. Noreen said Sable had always been jealous of Kenna. Noreen said, "You know how she is." Harriet was quiet for a long time. Then Harriet said, "Noreen, a power of attorney with someone else's signature is not a misunderstanding. It is not difficulty. It is not jealousy. It is a crime. I have known you for 22 years, and I am choosing to believe you did not know what you were doing. But I cannot choose to be in your life while the DA is deciding whether you did. I wish you well." Harriet did not call again. Harriet's name disappeared from the church thrift shop volunteer roster the following Monday. The Saturday after that, Noreen showed up at the thrift shop at 8 a.m. as usual. Harriet's station was occupied by a woman Noreen had never met. The manager told Noreen that her volunteer status was suspended pending the outcome of the legal matter. Noreen stood in the doorway of the thrift shop for about 15 seconds. Then she turned around and walked back to her car in the church parking lot. She sat in the car for 20 minutes. She did not start the engine for the first 11 of those minutes. By the end of the 3rd week, Kenna was living at Noreen's house. She had lost the apartment because the LLC was under investigation, and Noreen had frozen all operations on her attorney's advice. The apartment sat empty with the lights off, and a notice from the county taped to the front door. Jax was sleeping on an air mattress in Noreen's living room. Kenna's car insurance, which I had been paying for 36 months, had lapsed. She was pulled over on Highway 17 on a Wednesday morning. The ticket was $470. Her license was suspended pending proof of coverage. Kenna called Noreen. Noreen's accounts were frozen. Kenna called Lou. Lou's credit was destroyed. Kenna sat in the passenger seat of Noreen's car in the DMV parking lot for 45 minutes, while Noreen went inside and came back with paperwork that would take 10 to 14 business days to process. Jax was in the back seat watching a cartoon on a phone with 12% battery. Nobody called me. Nobody texted. Nobody sent a voice memo. The pipeline that had been running through my bank account for 52 months was dry, and the family that had used it as a faucet had no idea where the next drop was coming from, because there had never been another faucet. There had only ever been me. Sunday morning, 3 weeks and 4 days after the movers. My apartment balcony on Broad Street. The basil had doubled in size. The leaves were dark green and thick, and they smelled the way Bet's fence line used to smell on July mornings when the sun hit the garden before 7. Bet's trowel was lying across the rim of the clay pot, handle facing the chair. Morning light was coming through the balcony railing at an angle that put a stripe of warmth across the arm of my chair. Coffee in my hand. My phone was on the chair arm next to the coffee. Ruth Ann's text had come in at 7:14. Sunday, brunch at mine. Bring the sourdough. I make sourdough on Saturdays now. I started the week I moved in. The starter lives in a jar on the counter next to the trowel. The apartment is small. The balcony is smaller. The oven is temperamental and runs 15 degrees hot on the left side. The sourdough is getting better. Last week's loaf had a crust that crackled when I cut it, and Ruth Ann ate 3 slices standing at her kitchen counter and said, "This is the best thing you have ever made, and I am including your risk assessment spreadsheets." Ruth Ann and I met at a property management conference in Savannah 6 years ago. We bonded over bad coffee and a broken elevator that trapped us between the second and third floors for 47 minutes. In those 47 minutes, I learned that Ruth Ann manages 23 units in Mount Pleasant, that she does not tolerate late rent or early excuses, that she once filed an eviction on Christmas Eve because the tenant had been dodging her for 6 weeks, and that she cries during dog food commercials. She is the most practical and the most sentimental person I know, and the combination is what makes her the only person in my life who has never confused kindness with weakness. The day I moved out of Magnolia Street, Ruth Ann drove 4 hours from Mount Pleasant to help me pack. She arrived at 7 in the morning with a roll of packing tape and a box of donuts and a label maker she had bought specifically for the occasion. We packed for 9 hours. At 4 in the afternoon, I was in the bedroom putting things into boxes. And I had gotten to the stage of packing where you stop thinking about what matters and start putting everything in the same box because you are tired and the boxes are heavy and the house is empty and the emptiness is starting to sound like something you do not want to hear. I had put Bet's trowel in a box labeled donate. I had put it in without thinking. Ruth Ann was carrying a box past the bedroom door and she stopped. She looked in the donate box. She reached in and pulled out the trowel. She held it up. The wooden handle caught the late afternoon light from the window. "Sable, what is this doing in the donate box? I do not need it. You are not donating your grandmother's trowel. Put it in the keep box." Now she handed it to me. I held it. The handle was smooth. 30 years of Bet's grip had worn the wood down to a surface that felt like skin. I put it in the keep box. Ruth Ann nodded once and kept walking. She did not make a speech about it. She did not explain why. She did not need to. The trowel was in the keep box, and the trowel is on my windowsill, and the basil I planted with it 3 weeks ago is growing, and Ruth Ann is the reason I still have the only thing from that house that is worth keeping. The sourdough was wrapped in a towel on the counter, still warm from yesterday's bake. The coffee was warm in my hand. The morning light was on the balcony rail. The basil was growing. Across town, Noreen's house on Pine Ridge Road was full of people who did not want to be there, and empty of the one person who had been paying for all of them. The illegal dumping fine was unpaid. The DAS file was open. The identity fraud investigation was active. The HELOC was flagged. The civil demand from my attorney was sitting on the kitchen counter next to a stack of mail Noreen had stopped opening, because every envelope had a return address from a law office or a government agency or a bank that wanted an answer she did not have. Kenna was in the living room. Jax was on the air mattress. The apartment on Thornton Lane was empty with the lights off and a notice from the LLC investigation taped to the front door. Lou's boat was gone. Lou's credit was wrecked. Lou was sleeping in the guest room because he and Noreen had stopped speaking about money, And when you stop speaking about money in a house where the money was stolen, you stop speaking about everything. On Magnolia Street, Beatrice Hargrove was in the garden. She was planting a second row of roses along the fence where Bet's basil had grown for 20 years. She was using her own trowel. It was new. It was not Bet's. But the roses were going into the same soil, and the soil did not care whose hands were holding the handle. The soil just grew what was planted. On my balcony, the basil was growing. The trowel was across the rim of the pot. The sourdough was wrapped in a towel on the counter, still warm. The coffee was warm. Ruth Ann's text was on my phone. The morning was quiet, and the quiet was mine. And it was not the quiet of a house with 3 empty bedrooms and a mother's key in the lock. It was the quiet of a 1-bedroom apartment with 1 chair and 1 pot and 1 grandmother's trowel and 1 woman who had spent $94,000 learning that the only locked box worth keeping is the one you build yourself, with your own name on it, that nobody else has a key to. If this story found you today, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and share it with the person who was told they loved money more than family by the person who was stealing it. My grandmother Bet planted basil along a fence and fed her neighbors and did her own taxes and never forged a signature in her life. She left me a trowel with a smooth handle and a lesson that was not about gardening. The basil is growing. The trowel is on the rim. The door downstairs is locked. And the key is mine.